May 7th, 1915. Just 18 minutes. That's all it took for one of the world's most luxurious passenger ships to vanish beneath the waves and take nearly 1,200 lives with it. This isn't just the story of a ship that sank. It's a story of a warning ignored, a war intensified, and a mystery that still haunts the deep. On the morning of May 1st, 1915, passengers arrived at Pier 54 in New York City. They were boarding the pride of the British merchant fleet, the RMS Lusitania. The Lusitania was no ordinary ship. At nearly 800 feet long, with 4 towering funnels and the ability to reach 25 knots, it was among the fastest and grandest liners in the world. Nicknamed the Greyhound of the Seas, it was a symbol of power and modern luxury. On board were 1,959 people, a mix of the wealthy and working class, Americans and Europeans. Among them were millionaire Alfred Vanderbilt, writer Elbert Hubbard, families with children, and dozens of crew members who had made the crossing many times before. But beneath the surface glamour, fear lingered. World War I had been raging in Europe for nearly a year. The Atlantic, once peaceful, had become a battlefield. German submarines, known as U-boats, had begun hunting British ships, and the Lusitania, though a passenger liner, was flying the British flag. Still, most passengers believed the Lusitania was too fast to be caught, too famous to be targeted. After all, no passenger liner had been sunk yet in the war. They were wrong. In the days leading up to the Lusitania's departure, newspapers across America ran a peculiar warning. Not an editorial or rumor, but an official notice from the Imperial German Embassy. Notice: travelers intending to embark on the Atlantic voyage are reminded that a state of war exists. Vessels flying the flag of Great Britain or her allies are liable to destruction. The warning was published right beneath Cunard's advertisement for Lusitania's sailing. Some laughed it off as propaganda. Others grew uneasy. Captain William Thomas Turner, a veteran sailor, took the warning seriously, but he was not ordered to delay or cancel the voyage. He was told to proceed as planned. Behind the scenes, however, German spies in New York had already informed Berlin of the Lusitania's departure, and far across the Atlantic, a silent predator was waiting. In the chilly waters off the coast of Ireland, the German submarine U-20, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Walter Schwieger, had already sunk several ships. The U-20 had torpedoes left and a final target in its sights. Schwieger's orders were clear: disrupt British shipping and cripple morale. Passenger ships were technically neutral, but Germany believed many of them carried war supplies, making them fair game. By early May, the U-20 had received intelligence about a large British liner headed into their patrol zone. Schwieger noted in his logbook, "We have a chance for a prize." For days, the submarine stalked the southern coast of Ireland, running low on fuel and food, but determined to make one final strike before returning to Germany. Then, on the morning of May 7th, a massive ship was spotted. It was 1:40 p.m. Lusitania had just passed Old Head of Kinsale, a prominent headland off Ireland's southern coast. The sky was clear. The sea was calm. The passengers were finishing lunch. Captain Turner had slowed the ship slightly due to fog earlier, but he wasn't zigzagging, a maneuver meant to confuse submarines. The ship was moving in a straight line. From the periscope of U-20, the Lusitania was an irresistible target, large, slow, and unaware. At 1:40 p.m., Schwieger gave the order. Fire. A single torpedo streaked through the water. Moments later, it slammed into the Lusitania's starboard side, just below the bridge. There was a muffled boom, followed by a second, larger explosion. The second blast is still a mystery. Some say it was coal dust. Others believe munitions were secretly on board. Whatever the cause, the result was catastrophic. Water began flooding the lower decks instantly. The ship started listing heavily to starboard. Panicked passengers rushed to lifeboats, but many were unusable due to the angle. Eyewitnesses described screams, smoke, and chaos. Parents clutched their children. Crew members tried desperately to maintain order. Alfred Vanderbilt, one of the wealthiest men aboard, gave his life jacket to a young woman and her child. He did not survive. Some lifeboats were launched too early and capsized. Others spilled passengers into the sea. Survivors would later speak of oil-covered water, bodies, and debris. In just 18 minutes, the Lusitania was gone. Of the 1,959 people on board, 1,198 perished, including 128 Americans. News of the sinking spread quickly across Europe and America. In Britain, outrage erupted. In Germany, celebrations quietly followed. The German press called it a justified act of war. The British, they claimed, had used civilians as cover for weapons. In America, anger swelled. Though the U.S. remained officially neutral, the death of American passengers changed public opinion. Dramatically, President Woodrow Wilson demanded answers, but stopped short of declaring war. The Lusitania had not drawn America into World War I, not yet. In London, suspicions grew. Why had the Lusitania exploded so violently? Why hadn't it been escorted? Was the British government hiding something? Officially, Britain denied that Lusitania was carrying weapons. But divers and documents later suggested otherwise. In fact, the Lusitania's manifest included 4,200 cases of rifle cartridges, fuses, and shell casings, all considered contraband by Germany. Did the British Admiralty, under Winston Churchill, deliberately leave the Lusitania unprotected, hoping its sinking would bring America into the war? Some believe it was a calculated sacrifice. Others argue it was bureaucratic negligence. The truth may never be fully known. Key documents vanished. Testimonies were sealed. Even Captain Turner was largely silenced after the war. The sinking of the RMS Lusitania remains one of the most controversial naval tragedies in history. Though it did not immediately draw America into war, it marked a turning point. Less than 2 years later, after continued U-boat attacks, the United States would enter World War I. The Lusitania became a symbol of innocence lost, of wartime ruthlessness, and of political manipulation. Even today, its wreck lies off the coast of Ireland in 300 feet of cold Atlantic water. Divers report eerie silence, shattered decks, and rusted lifeboat davits still hanging over empty waves. It is a grave and a reminder that even in war, truth can sink deeper than any ship. 1. Torpedo. 18 minutes. Over 1,000 lives lost. And a century later, the questions still remain. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe my channel.